Not all histories are written. Some are built. Downtown Srinagar, otherwise known as Sher-i-Khaas or Sher-i-Kashmir, is a place where history is not merely painted on walls or engraved in stones. It is truly lived in. Hazaar Dastaan is a listening to what time has tried to silence and what memory insists on preserving. So welcome to 1,000 stories, but only if one pays attention. We begin our journey with the Akand Mulla Shah Mosque, a striking example of Mughal era architecture in the heart of Srinagar. Built between 1649 and 1656 during the reign of Emperor Shah Jahan, this mosque departs from the older Kashmiri tradition of cedar wood structures. Instead, it showcases Mughal sophistication with clean white limestone walls and finely chiseled stonework. But this isn't just another monument of the past. What makes it truly special is who commissioned it. Jahanara Begum, daughter of Shah Jahan and sister to Aurangzeb. A powerful figure in her own right, she had this mosque built for her spiritual teacher, Mulla Shah. The Mulla Shah Mosque is the only medieval mosque in Kashmir that was sponsored by a woman. Today, the mosque, however, stands incomplete. What was meant to be a grand imperial project was abruptly abandoned after Shah Jahan's fall and Aurangzeb's rise to power. You can still see unfinished arches and exposed foundations, silent reminders of a history interrupted. Along the western wall, you'll find Persian inscriptions penned by Kalim Kashani, a 17th century poet. One inscription even compares this mosque to the Holy Kaaba, giving us a glimpse into the spiritual ambitions that went behind this project. Now, to our next destination, Ali Masjid, standing tall in Srinagar's Eidgah and second only to the Grand Jamia Masjid. Built in 1470 AD under Sultan Hassan Shah, the mosque is an amalgamation of Central Asian, Mughal, and indigenous Kashmiri design. Its distinct pagoda-style tiered roof, a hallmark of traditional Kashmiri architecture, rests on 151 intricately carved deodar columns. Our next stop is the Budshah Tomb. This five-domed mausoleum, built in the 15th century, is where the mother of Sultan Zainul Abidin, Kashmir's most beloved ruler, is buried. The tomb reflects Timurid influences in Kashmiri architecture. Its domes are especially striking, adorned with bands of cavetto cornice, a Taurus lion, and a fillet with denticulated projections. Beneath the cornice, each rectangular recess is split by a double band of voussoir arch, giving the structure a distinct Byzantine character. The tomb's octagonal base, constructed from finely laid burnt brick, is characteristic of early Indo-Islamic funerary structure. Its modest ornamentation contrasts with its bold structural geometry. The walls were once decorated with glazed tilework, traces of which can still be seen today, bearing witness to the Persian aesthetic influences that shaped the region's medieval visual culture. Sultan Zainul Abidin, who ruled from 1420 to 1470, is remembered as a visionary king who led Kashmir into its golden age. A true patron of the arts, he introduced intricate crafts such as carpet weaving, papier-mâché, and wood carving, traditions that still continue to define Kashmir's history. Along the banks of the Jhelum, Kashmiri architecture reveals its vernacular genius. Timber-framed dub houses perched on stone plinths, cantilevered with deep eaves, projecting oriels and lattice pinchakari windows, forming a porous threshold between built form and flowing landscape. And thus we arrive at Khanqah-e-Moula, one of the oldest and most spiritually significant buildings in Kashmir. It stands quietly yet proudly on the banks of the Jhelum River, its gilded pinnacle reflecting both the sun and centuries of faith. Built in 1395 CE by Sultan Sikandar, This Khanqah, or Sufi hospice, was constructed in honor of the revered Persian saint Mir Sayyid Ali Hamdani, known lovingly in Kashmir as Shah Hamdan. His arrival in the 14th century marked a profound transformation in the cultural, spiritual, and artistic life of the valley. From introducing Islam and Sufi philosophy to promoting crafts like papier-mâché, wood carving, and carpet weaving, Hamdani's influence shaped the contours of Kashmir's identity in ways that still endure. But the building itself is no less remarkable. Unlike the stone mosque of the later Mughal period, Khanqah-e-Moula is built entirely of wood, a hallmark of traditional Kashmiri vernacular architecture. Its multi-tiered pagoda-style architecture, with overhanging eaves and steeply pitched roofs, mirrors the mountainous terrain that surrounds it. This architectural silhouette is more than aesthetic. The steep roofs are practical, built to withstand the valley's heavy snowfall and rains. The facade is richly painted and carved, showcasing intricate floral and geometric patterns, motifs drawn from Persian, Central Asian, and indigenous Kashmiri visual traditions. Above the entrance, elaborate mukarnas, stalactite-like carvings, form a delicate transition from the rectangular base to the soaring roofline. The wooden brackets and columns, often painted in deep greens, blues, and reds, are not just structural supports. They're storytelling surfaces, carrying centuries of spiritual devotion in their brushstrokes. Inside, the walls and ceilings are adorned with vibrant papier-mâché work, a technique introduced by Hamdani's followers and perfected by generations of Kashmiri artisans. Arabic calligraphy in gold leaf traces, verses from the Quran flowing like breath across the warm deodar wood panels. The prayer hall radiates a quiet intimacy. Light filters through delicate trellis work, illuminating the textures of devotion embedded in every corner. Despite facing multiple fires across the centuries, in 1480, in 1731, in 1801, and in 1893, the Khanqah has been rebuilt each time, carefully restoring its original form. This process of a continual reconstruction and restoration is not just about preservation, it's an act of living memory, a reflection of how the people of Kashmir have chosen to carry forward their past. But Khanqah-e-Moula is not just a building. It's part of a much larger spiritual ecosystem. It was the anchor of the Kubrawiya Sufi order in Kashmir, the first of 6 major silsilas or mystical lineages that shaped Islamic life in the region. While the Rishi order emerged indigenously, the Kubrawi, Nurbakhshi, Suravardi, Qadiri, and Naqshbandi orders came from Persian and Central Asian lands, bringing with them a cosmopolitan theological output. Sufi mystics presiding over Khanqahs like this lived lives of austerity and contemplation. They offered guidance, healing, and spiritual education to their disciples, who then spread Sufi ideas through the network of Khanqahs and shrines across the valley. The teachings were passed down through oral traditions, poetry, hagiographies, or tazkiras written in Persian. These texts tell stories not only of mystical insight but of social reform, pluralism, and compassion. One such figure, Baba Daud Khaki, a Suravardi master and disciple of Hamdani's son, composed treatises in the 16th century that embrace flexibility in interpretation. A quality historian, Muhammad Ashrafani, refers to as latitudinarian. In these writings, issues like veiling, vegetarianism, and celibacy are treated with a spiritual openness, often absent in more literalist interpretations of Islam. This is the spirit that permeates Khanqah-e-Moula, one of accommodation, not exclusion, intimacy, not grandeur, resilience, not ruin. More than a monument, this Khanqah is a living relic of Kashmir's syncretic soul, one where Persian influences meet Himalayan grounds, and something entirely unique took root. serene northern shores of the Dal Lake, framed by the distant suburban hills. The Hazratbal Dargah stands not merely as a sacred site but as an architectural landmark, a synthesis of traditional Kashmiri aesthetics and Indo-Islamic modernism. The word Hazratbal translates from Persian to respected place, Hazrat meaning revered and Bal meaning place. And this sanctity is deeply embedded not only in its religious significance but also in the meticulous care of its structural design. The Dargah houses the Moy Muqaddas, a relic believed to be a strand of hair from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, enshrined within the central prayer hall. But it is the building itself that elevates the spiritual aura into a visual form of devotion. Unlike most traditional Kashmiri shrines, which use extensive timber in pagoda-like tiers, Hazratbal marks a stylistic departure by employing a reinforced white marble facade, gleaming under the valley sun and providing a visual dialogue with Mughal sensibilities and Islamic modernity. The primary structure is composed of a domed sanctum, an arcaded facade, and a singular, elegant minaret that rises 168 feet high, a solitary expression of verticality and restraint. The dome, a commanding feature, is constructed on a square base, transitioning into an octagon through squinches, a classical Islamic architectural technique, before resolving into the perfectly proportioned hemispherical form. The surface of the dome is finely plastered and painted white, symbolic of spiritual purity and celestial ascent. It is capped with a gilded finial, echoing Persian and Central Asian mosque typologies. The minaret, to the left of the dome, balances the symmetry of the otherwise axial design. Slender, octagonal in its shaft, and rising from a robust square base, the minaret is punctuated with mukarnas like cornices and terminates in a small cupola that offers panoramic views of Dal Lake, at once a spiritual and geographical anchor. The prayer hall, or Jamaat Khana, is arranged along a hypostyle plan, divided by rows of cusped arches and supporting slender, load-bearing columns that exhibit both restraint and rhythm. The interior remains purposefully austere, minimal ornamentation, allowing for spiritual focus, yet subtle intricacies emerge in the delicate inlay work around the mihrab, carved arabesques above the entrance spandrels, and fine jali work that filters daylight into an ambient softness. A noteworthy feature is the extensive use of Kashmiri pinchrakari, lattice woodwork, seen in the clerestory windows that wrap around the upper story of the shrine. These ventilated screens regulate light and temperature while reflecting the region's vernacular craft language. Similarly, the base of the walls use local dub stone, its greyish hues grounding the visual brightness of the marble. Surrounding the dargah is a vast courtyard, often filled with pilgrims, demarcated by a periphery of colonnaded verandas with shallow arches and pyramidal roofs, blending classic Mughal plans with Kashmiri architectural pragmatism. These courtyards also reflect the communal essence of Islamic architecture, open space for collective ritual, contemplation, and congregation. The evolution of Hazratbal's current form traces its lineage to Mughal times, when the relic was first brought to Kashmir in the 17th century. The site saw successive constructions, initially in wood, later augmented in stone and marble. The present structure, completed in the 1960s under the supervision of Indian architect H.K. Malhotra, was envisioned as both a revival and reinterpretation, melding tradition with permanence, austerity with grandeur. Hazratbal thus becomes not just a religious edifice, but a dynamic text, readable through its materials, volumes, and spatial orientations. It narrates the story of devotion through stone and silence, offering a profound statement on the coexistence of reverence and regional craftsmanship. Its image reflected in the still waters of the Dal, Hazratbal is not merely a monument. It is a living sanctuary, where architecture becomes an extension of faith. Restraint becomes ornament, and every arch, every dome, speaks of quiet majesty. From the sacred serenity of the Hazratbal Dargah Our path brings us to the beating heart of Srinagar's spiritual legacy, the Jamia Masjid. Built at the zenith of Kashmir's Islamic cultural flowering, this grand mosque was commissioned by Sultan Sikandar and completed by Sultan Zainul Abidin in the year 1402, an era when Kashmir was not merely a place but a state of being, a cradle of convergence between civilizational lineages. Unlike the typical Islamic architecture that came before it, the Jamia Masjid defies expectations. It has no bulbous domes or soaring minarets. Instead, it embraces the indigenous soul of Kashmir. Four majestic Azans open into a 376-pillared quadrangle, each deodar pillar hewn from the primeval forests that have washed over the valley since before memory. These aren't just structural support, they are arboreal sentinels, whispering stories from centuries past. Each pillar is hand-carved, with floral arabesques and interlacing vine motifs, bearing uncanny resemblance to the ornamental vocabularies of Buddhist viharas and Hindu mandaps. This is not only incidental, it is intentional. The mosque's very grammar is a dialogue between faiths, a visual testimony to Kashmir's syncretic evolution. The floral motifs aren't merely decorative, they are metaphysical symbols of eternity, impermanence, and unity. At the center of the mosque lies the vast san or courtyard, an architectural pause that invites contemplation. Within, a marble ablution tank reflects the changing sky, a mirror to the believer and the seeker alike. And beyond it, the grand prayer hall, wooden, warm, and cathedral-like, echoes with centuries of prayers, philosophical disputes, Sufi zikr, and moments of stillness. From an engineering perspective, the structure is a marvel of climatic adaptation. The use of timber-based radiated construction with its seismic flexibility allows the mosque to endure multiple earthquakes that would have shattered stone dome structures. The high gabled roofs, layered with wooden shingles, are designed not only to shed the valley's heavy snow, but also to harmonize with the silhouette of the Himalayan ranges encircling the city. The mosque has burned and been rebuilt 3 times. Each resurrection is not merely a restoration, it is a recommitment to an idea that faith, rooted in place and people, will always re-emerge stronger. And so the Jamia Masjid does not stand, it testifies to resilience, to reinvention, and to the refusal to be forgotten. This is not just a building. It is a palimpsest, layered with theological debates, imperial ambitions, colonial interventions, and mass mobilizations. And so, here, under the canopy of Chinars, beside the murmuring Jhelum, in the depths of Sher-i-Khaas or Sher-i-Kashmir, our journey through Hazaar Dastaan finds its echo. We began with the premise that not all histories are written. Some are built, and in Jamia Masjid we find one such history, not etched in ink but inscribed in wood, fire, and faith. If you heard closely, you've heard it. The rustle of 1,000 stories hidden in the latticework, the silence between the footsteps on the worn stones. This is the archive that breathes, a living memory stitched into architecture. So we end not with an answer, but an invitation to walk again, to listen deeper, and to remember more kindly. Because Hazaar Dastaan was never about reaching the end, it was always about beginning to pay attention.